Okay, before we start reading this poem, Catullus 51, I want to urge you, if you have not done so already, to please, please, please read the culture section in stage 45. It really gives you a lot of good context about Catullus' relationship with the woman that he calls Lesbia in his poems, but whose real name was Clodia. So please, please read that. I think it'll help you out quite a bit. So we're moving away from poems that make fun of people or tell a story and mock them. We're moving away from Catullus actually showing a very sad and sentimental side in talking about the elegy to his brother. Now we're moving strictly to love, and wow, it's pretty awesome, I have to say. Now this poem, Catullus 51, has been interpreted usually as the first time that Catullus saw Lesbia and fell in love with her. So it's interesting because the first three stanzas really do kind of tell a narrative story, but then the fourth stanza sort of turns it into more of like an elegy where he's just sort of contemplating something a little bit deeper and intangible about his character and the effect that Lesbia has on him, the power that she holds over him. So without further ado, let's dive into it. The last thing I will say, in the culture section, the Greek poet Sappho was mentioned, and she wrote a very similar poem in Greek, and Catullus, really the first couple of stanzas, he sort of loosely translated the Greek to Latin. So I just wanted to point that out, that the thought behind the first couple of stanzas is not Catullus's alone for sure. So here we go. Ille mi paresse Deo videtur, ille si fas est superare divos, qui sedens adversus identitem te spectat, et audit dulce ridentem, misero quod omnes eripit sensus mihi. Nam simul te Lesbia aspexi, nihil est super mi vocis in ore, lingua sed torpit, tenuis sub artus flamma demanat, sonatus suopte tentenant aures, gemina teguntur lumina nocte. Wow, that was one sentence. All of the first three stanzas there. Pretty incredible. We're going to read that again. Here we go. Ille mi par esse Deo videtur, ille si fas est superare divos, qui sedens adversus identitem te spectat et audit dulce ridentem, misero quod omnes eripit sensus mihi. Nam simul te Lesbia aspexi, nihil est super me vocis in ore. Lingua sed torpit, tenuis sub artus flamma demanat, sonatus suopte tentenat aures, gemina teguntur lumina nocte. Okay, so just for the purpose of making it a little bit easier, I think what we're going to do is go from ille to ridentem. How about that? So looking at the first, well, let's just take a look at it. What do we see here? Probably the first thing that you saw is the word, or the first thing that might have jumped out at you, maybe, was esse. We see that infinitive, and superare in line 2, that's an infinitive as well. So you've got two infinitives. Now, gosh, I'm going to try this. It's probably not going to work out so well. I usually put the infinity sign above them. Hey, that wasn't so bad. Okay, so esse and superare are infinitives. Are there clauses anywhere in the first two lines? In the first line, I don't see anything that indicates a clause. In the second line, I see C. Oh boy, bad puns. Late at night. Hey, 9:48. That's late for me. Just wait a few years. You'll see. Si fas est, that's just a very, very tiny clause. And of course, we can see that the verb inside the clause is est. Okay. Now, in the first two lines, do we have a main verb? Well, I take that back. Let's scratch that for a minute. Let's keep going. Do we see a clause? Well, we do. Right after divos, we have the word qui, And where do we think that that's going to end? Well, a clause needs to have some kind of verb. And as we're moving along, we see that spectat and audit are both verbs. But there appears to be some sort of accusative-ish word, maybe a direct object after, so we should probably end the clause right here. And you know what, let's take it down actually to the colon. Do we see another clause? And we sure do. It starts with quod here, and using our punctuation as a guide, we're going to back up a little bit, and we need a verb. Eripit would be a verb, but we have a couple words after it, and using punctuation again, we can probably rest assured that the clause ends here. So, knowing that we've got a big clause here and another big clause here, and we have a small clause there, we have to have a main verb somewhere in these first two lines. We have two infinitives. What looks main verbish? The only thing that is probably jumping out at you would be videtur, videtur. Now, our good old pal video, videfre. We know that video means to see, but when you learned this last year, toward the end of the year, when video is used in the passive voice, as it's used here, aristor, mormeniantor, passive voice being verbida, or verbida, because it's passive, quiet. When video, to see, is used in the passive, it has a weird translation most times. It's translated to seem, S-E-E-M. So, and I believe that's how it's going to be translated here as well. Let's see here. Do we have a subject? Well, we sure do right off the bat. Here it is, ille. And it's used again, ille in line 2. What's ille mean? It means that guy. Oh, who's that guy? Well, we don't know yet. Okay. So, moving on, inside of the clause, the qui clause, we see, we already identified our two verbs. Those would be spectat and audit. Gosh, this would be so much easier if I could use the pen, but I can't. Now, what else? Let's see. Now, interestingly, I don't think that your book tells you this. They do not. They did not take pity on you, but I will. Redentem, you can see, ends in an em, and we mentioned earlier that, of course, that's an accusative ending. And I think our accusative color was this, redentem. I'm going to tell you that redentem, now we know, look at it now, verby in the front, nouny in the back. It's a participle. What kind of participle is it? It's got an NT for present. So it's a present participle, and so it's translated as verbing. It's actually describing te, which is also accusative. Okay. By the way, who does qui refer to? Who? Probably referring to ille. And in fact, it is. So whoever ille is, whoever that guy is, he happens to be the subject of this relative clause, that guy who, and then he's the subject of spectat and audit. Sedens, oh gosh, looks like a verb in the front, noun in the back. It's got an NS for nominative singular, present participle. Also going with qui and by extension ille, so that's nominative singular. Adversus is, well, we'll get to adversus and identitem in just a little bit. Well, let's keep moving on. Usually the words that we have left over tend to be, more often than not, adverbs or conjunctions, basically. So, moving on. What else do we have? In the second clause, we do have a verb, and we mentioned it, I believe, earlier. It would be eripit. Now, let's see. Anything else we could say? Oh, omnes. Sensus is a fourth declension noun. So knowing that, you see that es and us, that would be accusative plural. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight omnes and sensus. Okay, so omnes is going with sensus. And it's hard to kind of draw this, so I'm just going to use black here. Misero, I'll go ahead and tell you. Some of you probably figured this out. And I think actually your book tells you. Yeah, they do. They underline them. Misero describes mihi. How nice of your book to do that. Okay, so we've kind of road mapped everything, and now it's just a matter of vocab and then looking at everything. I mean, my goodness, if we just wanted to go left to right, can we try that? That'd probably be crazy, but let's give it a shot. That guy, and then using the glosses on page 212, you know that me is short for mihi, that means to me or for me. That guy to me, par means equal, esse means to be, deo means to a god, videtur means seems. Huh. So piecing that all together, you could read it left to right, but of course it's easier to say subject, verb, etc. That guy seems to me to be equal to a god. Huh. That guy, si fas est, if it is right, in other words, if it's right to say this. What do you have to imply here? We have to use videtur again. He seems to overpower the gods or surpass the gods. So what is this special guy doing that he seems to Catullus to be equal to a god, or if it's okay for me to say so, to overcome or overpower or surpass the gods? What's he doing? Well, here it is. That guy who, sitting across, adversus, or sitting opposite, identidem, repeatedly looks at and hears you laughing sweetly. Oh boy. And who's the you? Well, stated later, it's Lesbia. So apparently Catullus is at some kind of party, probably a dinner party, and he catches sight of this woman named Lesbia, and who else is there but some guy, Ile. Most scholars think it's Lesbia's husband, but who knows, maybe it's not. And that guy, whoever that guy is, he keeps looking at Lesbia, and Catullus is sort of looking at Lesbia, but also looking at that guy, and thinking about him. And he says, once again, that guy seems to me to be equal to a god. That guy, if it's okay to say so, seems to me to surpass the gods, who, sitting across or opposite, repeatedly looks at and listens and hears you laughing sweetly. Now, quod here means a thing which. That's kind of a strange translation, and your book does help you out. They do tell you that. A thing which snatches away all senses from wretched me. So just the fact that that guy gets to sit across from Lesbia at the dinner party and listen to her and watch her sweetly laughing, that's apparently just driving Catullus insane. A thing which snatches away all senses from wretched me. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about that coming right up. Look at the next little bit. Well, what do we see? Where is there a verb? We see aspexi. Well, actually, let's start with clauses. Are there any clauses? What does simul mean? That means as soon as. I feel like that starts a clause. As soon as, bam, and we need to end it at a verb. Aspexi would be a verb here. Okay. Wow. For as soon as I caught sight of you, Lesbia, nihil est super mi vocis in ore. Now, there is a little bit of a help here on a couple of these phrases in your book on page 212. Nihil ... vocis means no voice, right? And then est super really is super est, to remain or to be left. So as soon as I caught sight of you, Lesbia, literally nothing of a voice remains for me in ore, in my mouth. Okay. So apparently, as soon as I saw you, I just couldn't speak anymore, right? And all of my senses, going back to this other bit, have just been snatched away from me. For as soon as I caught sight of you, lesbia, I'll go ahead and mark that in our accusative color just to help you out. Te would be accusative here. Nihil vocus. Nihil vocus is sort of like your subject. Literally, nihil would be the subject, and vocus is kind of going along with it. No voice, or nothing of a voice, is left or remains for me in my mouth. And then he goes on to say, lingua sed torpet tenuis subartus flama demanat, sonetus suopte tentenat aures, geminate guntur lumina nocte. Well, this is really very verb-rich and not clause-heavy. There are no clauses whatsoever here. There are some verbs. Let's find them. Torpet, that's our first verb. Moving on after that, we have demanat. What else? Tentenat. Those of you who have ever read Edgar Allan Poe's poem The Bells might recall the phrase, the tentenabulation of the bells, bells, bells. That's a word that comes from this verb in Latin, which was an onomatopoeia both in Latin and English, apparently, and teguntur. So we have 4 verbs here. Bam! And he's going to continue to describe the physical effects that just catching sight of lesbia has had on him. What's the subject of torpet? What looks nominative? Well, we've got lingua, tongue. Interesting. Moving on, tenuis subartus flama demana. Whoa, flama. Flama. Described, by the way, by tenuis. And what is subartus? Subartus, rather? Wow, that looks like a prepositional phrase to me. So I'm going to underline it. In the wrong color, but hey, whatever. And then sonetu suopte. Sonetu suopte. Suopte is really just suo. Sonetu suo. Sonetu being a 4th declension noun. And so we can say that these are ablative. I'm going to do this really quickly. What's the subject of tentenat? We know that the subject of torpet is lingua. The subject of demanat is flama. The subject of tentenat, see how it ends in an nt? Well, the only word that's plural here would be aures. So ears. And then, how about this next part? Gemina teguntur lumina nocte. What are we going to do here? What is our subject of teguntur? Again, it's plural. That would be lumina. Lumina. And what about gemina nocte? Long A, see the long mark? And an E, the last case is the ablative A, O, E, S, S, S. Okay, so still we're telling a story here. That guy who's looking at you, who gets to sit across from you at the dinner table, man, I envy that guy. He's like a god to me because he gets to just watch you sweetly laughing, and this thing is just driving me crazy because here I am. As soon as I caught sight of you, I couldn't speak. I didn't have a voice anymore. Lingua sed torpet, but my tongue is numb. That's what it means. It's paralyzed. And tenuis, thin, a thin flame flows down underneath my joints or limbs, however you want to define artus there. So a thin flame flows down underneath my limbs, and my ears tentenat, they ring with their own sound. So I guess that's just saying his ears are just ringing, like it's like he can't hear, and he just feels all weird inside, and finally, lumina, my lights. What do you think he means by his lights? If we're talking about, obviously the physical effect of the senses, his lights are his eyes, and my eyes, teguntur, are covered. by double night, meaning basically like I just can't see anything. I can't say anything. I can't hear anything. That's the effect you're having on me because I'm so incredibly in love with you, apparently. So thus ends the narrative part of the poem, and now we have this last little bit. Otium Catulle tibi molestum est. Otio exultas nimiumque gestis. Otium et reges prius et beatas perdidit urbes. I'll read that one more time. This is sort of the part of the poem that's no longer narrative. Otium Catulle tibi molestum est. Otio exultas nimiumque gestis. Otium et reges prius et beatas perdidit urbes. So starting off at the very beginning, what is the verb? And it looks like our verb is est. That's our first verb. What do you notice? Who's being addressed in this last stanza? Well, it's Catullus. Catullus is talking to himself. What is the subject of est? And our subject here is the word otium. It happens to be described or modified, however you want to say that, by the adjective molestum. Moving on to the next part. What do you think are the verbs? Does anything look like a verb? Do we have any clauses? Once again, there are no clauses here in the second part of the poem. And we do have two verbs. Exultas is one of the verbs, and gestis is another. So we have two main verbs here. Okay. And then finally in the last two lines, do we have a verb? Do we see one? And the answer is yes, we have the verb perdidit. Now going back to exultas and gestis, they both have the same subject. So look at the ending. O means I, S means you. Whoa, that is not the color. Is it the color? Yeah, I guess it is. Maybe. So you would be the subject of gestis and exultas. But perdidit, though, the subject returns to otium. Okay, so otium is the subject of perdidit. What is the direct object of perdidit, by the way? We know otium is subject, verb. Well, bam. Reges seems to be a direct object. And, beatas urbes. Beatas urbes. The last case, I'm sorry, accusative plural goes as, os, es. There we go. So I saw you at this party and I just fell madly in love with you, and I was really jealous of that dude who was watching you, and it had all these crazy effects on me physically, and dude is in love, right? And, I don't know, some of you have probably been in love, some of you are probably in love now. If you've never been in love, open yourself up to the possibility. It's an amazing thing, and but it can drive you crazy. And here's what he says at the very end: otium, which means, if you remember from last year, that means leisure time or being at rest. So being at rest or leisure time, Catullus, is troublesome to you. You get excited and you become restless too much with leisure time or with being at rest. Leisure time or being at rest, however you want to translate it, perdidit, destroyed both kings. And prius means before now, so leisure time destroyed before now both kings and blessed or wealthy cities. Wow, so quite a statement there at the very end of the poem. Kind of odd statement about the effects of being at rest or having too much leisure time. So something I want you to journal about is how in the world does this very last stanza fit with the rest of the poem? I'm curious about your thoughts. See you next time. Oh, we're just getting started. The relationship is going to be really good for a while. And then some things are going to go wrong. And then it's going to get really, really, really bad. Oh boy. Okay. See you next time.